Please note that this content contains sensitive information regarding mental health and topics related to suicide. What's Underneath is a CastBox original produced in partnership with Studio 71.
CastBox is the fastest growing, highest rated podcast app on both iOS and Android, where you can find all of your favorite podcasts.
You can listen to What's Underneath wherever you get your podcasts, but we hope you'll give CastBox a shot and see for yourself.
Hello and welcome to What's Underneath,
the podcast that will inspire radical self-acceptance through empowering you to embrace what's unrepeatable in you.
I'm Lily Mandelbaum, and sitting next to me is my mom, Elisa Goodkind.
And we are StyleLikeU. In our new podcast, we are going to expand the types of intimate, unfiltered conversations we've been having in our viral video series, The What's Underneath Project.
Each week, we will interview diverse nonconformists about their relationship to style, self-image, and identity.
Being radically honest without shame and holding that honesty with compassion is self-acceptance. The intro that I would like to do for the incredibly beautiful Inside and Out Riya, who we're interviewing today, who is an artist and a poet, an extraordinary artist. You know, it's not only her like incredible external beauty and personal style, which is so unique, but also the very, very honest and brave communication that she is doing on Instagram and in social media with her own personal struggles and pain, especially around the areas of mental health, which is definitely an all too untalked about taboo subject and something that really needs to come to the surface because we all struggle with mental health in one way or another. I know that I do, and have had a very long road with anxiety and wounded child syndromes that still haunt me to this day and that I'm still working on at 60 years old. So I'm very, very excited to be doing this podcast today with her. And yeah, I feel very fortunate that we get to meet very, very special people like Riya.
Thank you for giving me the space to talk. That was such a lovely introduction. Thank you so much. I also really like the wounded child syndrome. That's a really good. I'm just gonna start using that from now on.
What do you like about it?
I just so much of who I am, like the summation of my adulthood, is really rooted in my childhood and the wounds that I acquired in childhood that I'm still kind of like wading through. And you're 60 and you still are. So, I mean, yeah, it's a process, and it's not, people have obviously been really concerned about my discussions online about my mental health, and I get a lot of messages where they're like, I hope you're feeling better now. And it's like, how do I explain or communicate that there are days where I'll feel better, but the struggle itself is going to be a lifelong thing. It's never going to go away. I'm always going to have depression. I'm always going to be mentally ill. And the trauma is not going to disappear, you know, but I just have to find a way every day to learn how to bring vitality into my life and to be gentle with myself and all of that. But it's just weird when I guess people expect you to just get better.
I really relate to that, because when I am honest on social media with personal struggles and, you know, anxiety, which is the big issue for me, and I noticed that response too, like, hope you feel better. I've noticed it with you, Lily, as well, when you talked about your own struggles, emotional struggles. People always say, hope, you know, get better, feel better, hope you're better, or so sorry to hear.
Like it's the flu or something, and like you won't have it.
And it does take it. I find that I have to be totally transparent. I find that a disappointing response, because I feel like I'm trying to connect in a way that I'm not going to get that response. Like it's going to be more, I don't know what exactly, but just not that. It goes along with, I think, what the whole overall problem is, which is it's really not above board and shame-free to have depression and anxiety and wounds and struggles and pain. And meanwhile, I would be pretty hard pressed to find anyone that underneath it didn't.
I've noticed that when we do talk about mental health, our conversations are often restricted to depression and anxiety, when in reality people suffer from like a wide array of mental illnesses, and there are personality disorders. A friend of mine recently disclosed to me that he's schizophrenic, and I always just assumed he was a bit odd. That made me realize I probably know lots of people who are schizophrenic, and they don't feel like they're in a position where they can just come out and say that to people because of the stigma.
Yeah.
And what kind, like, that's horrible to carry that with you all the time. And
Yeah, I also think it has to do on some level with just like the obsession in our culture with like end goals of like everything is about like getting to a goal or like and so being in a journey that's just like winding and ever present and like
Up and down
and messy, and it's every day something that someone's dealing with is not something that we're like taught to like know what to do with. Like we're always like, oh, you have to love yourself is like as if it's a goal that then like you'll be cool for the rest of your life if you get there.
And I think there's just so much fear. I mean, obviously there's so much fear around it. When I have to say from my own experience and where I am now, there's so much suffering and so much pain, but it's brought me to an amazing place at this point in terms of transformation and in terms of really feeling in touch with what's really inside all of us beneath it all, which is, in my opinion, this endless strength and light, and you can call it God or the universe or whatever it is, but you have to work really hard. Like this is something that, I mean, it's taken me this long to feel that I'm in a place where I can really rely on this internal power and to find that power. And yeah, it's come with a lot of darkness.
So can you talk about something that you're like that's making you feel excited in your life right now, just like putting a pep in your step?
I can talk about small things.
Yeah.
Like, I recently started wearing saris in public, just casually, and because I'm a little estranged from my culture, just because I'm estranged from my family. But I was born in Bangladesh, and my earliest memories are like playing in the dirt in Bangladesh, and it just saddened me a bit that I kind of lost touch, whether it was like growing up, just the embarrassment of being from there, the embarrassment of like not being American. The shame of not being like white. I kind of wanted to just erase that part of myself.
When you were here or there?
Here, like when I was just growing up here.
How old were you when you came here?
I was just a year old, but we went back and forth for a bit. And so, so when I moved to Berlin, because your focus isn't on survival, like paying rent, because it's such an affordable city, I was able to really just live. So one of the main things that I did was look up YouTube videos of like Bengali aunties cooking and like giving you instructions on how to like make all the dishes that my mom used to make me. And I just made them. I made like all of my favorite dishes that my mom used to make me that I used to love. And I learned that I can do it. Like I learned how to cook really good, I'll say it myself, like really good curry from scratch within like months. And it's a power that I didn't even know that I had. And cooking brings me so much joy. I love feeding people. I love the communal experience. I love everything about it. So that and wearing the sari in public. Like I went to the Standard yesterday with some friends and we had some drinks and I was just in this really like vibrant blue sari, and I got a lot of looks, but it just felt really nice to just be in like this space and wear something that my mom would wear and be like, it's not a special occasion. This is just what all my ancestors wore. This is what everyone back home wears. Like I don't need for it to be a special occasion in order to like put it on, you know? So that was nice. Yeah.
Does your mom still wear them?
She does. She wears them like every day. Yeah.
And when did you stop wearing them?
Well, saris are for they're for women, like you know. So I never really had the chance. Like, it's not something you would wear growing up. You would wear like salwar kameez, or you know, like the 3-piece with the veil and the dress and the pants. But I never really wore saris until now.
And so I just want to say, just mention something about the food, but that's, you know, that's really, it strikes me as something that's very healing to the wounded child, is to feed yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, like correctly, what feels right.
Yeah. Because sometimes I would, you know, I'd get nostalgic and I would really, really miss my mother's food. But the problem is, like, she and I have a very strained relationship. And my mother also, going back to mental illness, is obviously undiagnosed, but she's definitely very mentally ill, has always been mentally ill. So my relationship, she's a very kind of toxic person to be around and doesn't realize it, like, is absolutely clueless. So I figured the best thing to do is just to maintain a distance. Like, I love her from afar, but it's best not to go there. And so that was the best thing, was like recreating all of the food that she made for me and realizing I can do it. I can nurture myself in ways that she didn't. I can feed myself and also be gentle with myself in ways that she wasn't with me. And it was a very poetic, kind of powerful feeling.
How did that manifest? Can you talk a little bit about your awakening to your mother's, you know, treatment of you, and you're separating from that and finding yourself, and, you know, finding yourself aside from that?
Well, it was a very gradual, strenuous process. I think one of the most interesting things about getting older is kind of seeing the mortality in your parents' faces. And she's not the same woman that mistreated me, you know, when I was a child. Like, she's frail, she's more soft-spoken, has really, I don't know, kind of just softened up throughout the years. And I don't have any resentment. I just have a lot of sympathy. I have a lot of compassion for my mother. She wasn't educated, like, never went beyond primary school, was married to a man that she met like the day before she got, you know, the marriage, basically. And she speaks very broken English despite having lived here for I think like maybe 30 years now, just because they live in a very insulated community with other Bangladeshis. And my mother was also like mistreated by my father, and her children were strangers. Like, she was raising children in this foreign territory, and they were becoming unlike her. And she had all these dreams and hopes, and I guess didn't, you know, it really saddened her to see her firstborn become so American, which isn't shocking.
Oh, you're her firstborn?
Yeah, I'm the oldest. And in that vein, like, I don't know, it's hard.
It must be very hard to come to terms with recognizing that you didn't get what you needed, or that you were mistreated, or, you know, like, that's just a very hard,
because when you're the firstborn in an immigrant household, if you're a first generation immigrant and you're the oldest, it's your responsibility to navigate this very white world, because I didn't get any handouts. Like, my parents didn't know how the system worked. They didn't, you know, applying for college, doing everything. I did all that on my own. I had to teach my siblings how to do those things. So not only are you navigating the confusion of having two very contrasting identities, but you're also the first one to do it. And you have to kind of share those resources with your family as well. But you're
their parent in a lot of ways.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit more about your own process of coming to terms with, is it not getting the love, the unconditional love, or I don't want to put words in your mouth, but whatever it was where you felt mistreated, and then how you've, just sort of your process of dealing with that, and like, when did that happen? And
well, I think
I know it's ongoing.
No, but all within the last couple of years, I would say, is just having the capacity for forgiveness, not even forgiveness, but I guess understanding, coming to grips with the fact that my mother is not an evil person. She's a multi-dimensional human being who is very mentally ill and comes from a place where mental illness is there's not even a word for it. So just understanding that, understanding her position as a woman in this country, and just, forgiving her.
Does that go along with forgiving yourself?
Of course. Yeah. And then also like realizing there's nothing to forgive yourself for, that you're just surviving and you make mistakes. And as a teenager, I was like harsh to her, because I had all this piled up resentment, and I never really considered how life is how life's like for her, and the difficulties that she goes through, and how completely isolated she feels from her children and from everyone around.
Alone.
I mean, just alone. And yeah.
When you say mental illness, like what do you mean by that exactly? I think that would be interesting.
So I think my mother, I mean, she definitely has depression. I know this because so much of my like childhood memories consist of like my mom just either lying in bed a lot or going to the windowsill and just like drinking tea and kind of crying to herself, and like a lot, like every other day, and never talking about it, of course. And she was always tired, like constantly tired, just always fatigued. I'm amazed that she did all the things that she did do, because I mean, there was always, she would cook 3 times a day, feed all of us, pick us up from school. And if you're a really depressed, debilitatingly depressed person, those things require so much energy. And she used to do that. But the other important thing is, I'm pretty sure she is like, she has narcissistic personality disorder. And that's a whole other animal. And that's where if that goes undiagnosed and unacknowledged, that can create a lot of toxicity in your life with your loved ones, with just everything.
Right, because you can't love, right?
You can love, but you love in a very selfish way.
So like what would be an example of that?
Growing up, my mother really didn't grant me my own self. I was an extension of her. So it was a very conditional love. Like if I did what she said, then she would love me. And if she asked me to bring her the remote and I brought the wrong remote, then I would be the worst child. And it literally, it's not even an exaggeration. It would be small things like getting a remote, or going back to the oldest immigrant child's thing. If we got a letter in the mail from the government or the insurance or something, and she can't speak English, so I'd have to read it to her. But I'm a 10-year-old child, so that my knowledge is very limited about how these things work. But then she would get really frustrated with me for not understanding, and angry, actually. Like, I brought you to this country, don't you even speak English? Like, like just, and then it'll spiral into like, and it'll spiral into like verbal, physical, emotional abuse in all kinds of ways.
It's so under the radar how the destruction. And also I was once on a plane with a therapist. I don't even remember what they said, but they said that it's not healable. Like you can't, narcissistic personality disorder, I am 99.9% sure, is not something that can be corrected. It's like this, it's so deep.
Well, what can be corrected is like your behavior and your interpersonal interactions, like how, because it is a personality disorder. If your personality is disordered, it's extremely difficult to undo that, but you can control how you treat others, and you do have a compass for what's right and wrong, and that's something like my mom didn't have.
Right,
because
they
she didn't have
don't
the resources.
have it.
Yeah.
They don't have a compass, right? Yeah. If you have the disorder.
I wouldn't say that, because I think it's a little more new. I mean, I think people, like, they're very intelligent people who have narcissistic.
Yes.
And they know what's right and what's wrong.
I think they're generally they're known to be, and this might be a real generalization, which is why we're talking about this, because we don't want it to be a generalization, and we want.
Well, the other thing is, like, we were talking about stigmatization and mental illness, so I don't want to stigmatize NPD.
Well, that's why I think it's good to talk about it. Exactly.
Because actually, maybe that's one that's kind of like demonized.
It is.
I think it is.
Yeah. I don't know anyone in my life ever who's ever come out to me and said, I have this.
Right.
And I definitely know some people,
Right.
So.
But just for the sake of bringing it into the light and giving it understanding.
Yeah.
From what I understand of it, it's something that somehow where you're not given as a really, really, really young child, like you're not mirrored back to as a warm or a loving parent would do, like mirror back to a child, and they develop these masks and personalities to get what they need and ultimately and eventually lose touch with who they are. And then there's this incredible sense of frustration because there's this very, very, very hurt person way underneath it all that is really stuck in getting approval in kind of these toxic negative ways.
That's the hardest. That's the hardest thing is like I always knew that my mother was in unbearable pain through and through. I mean, it just radiated from her and onto me. And so that's what I mean by having compassion now is I see that now. And how can I possibly hate her if she's just a person that's suffering?
Definitely. And then that just hurts you.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with, like you said, you're a sort of estranged at this moment. Like, how do you deal with the juxtaposition or what, like the between inside forgiveness that you feel and like non-resentment and all of that and compassion with holding that boundary? Like, is that something that you struggle with, or is that something that you feel kind of at peace with at this moment? Or
I haven't spoken to my mom in like 11 months now. She just doesn't know my number. So if she wanted to reach out, she would have no way of,
and that's
of doing that.
That's because
I think it started because I had no way of explaining to her that I was going to move to Germany. She has a very simple mind, and you have to consider like where she's from and like her level of education and just the conditions of her upbringing. But, things like, especially for immigrants, things like aspirations are a weird thing to them because for them, life is all about what's pragmatic, what's functional. So if I say, I want to move to Berlin because I'll have time to make art and it's not so expensive, she'll be like, that's not something she'll ever really understand. And the other interesting thing about my dynamic with my mom is there's a huge language barrier. Like my mother speaks Bengali, but in Bangladesh there's like tons of dialects, probably hundreds of dialects. And it's such a small country too, which is like really mystifying. But so the specific dialect that she speaks, it's I was always ashamed of it growing up because I guess it's considered to be like a lower class dialect. So this goes, hand in hand with me like trying to whitewash myself because I was embarrassed, where I was also, embarrassed of like my parents' dialect. So I watched a lot of like proper, Bengali television shows, and I just tried to speak like quote unquote like proper Bengali. So I can't even speak the same Bengali as my mom. So when we do talk and she doesn't speak English, it's all very basic, very basic. Like, what did you eat today? This is tasty. Thank you. It's like it's not emotional. I would never be able to articulate how I feel, any kind of greater construct, any kind of idea, form, thinking. We just won't be able to. We're just not capable of having that.
And it sounds like she's not capable of in any way of meeting your needs or meeting your emotional needs.
No, and she never has. When I first was hospitalized, I was 15. When I was discharged, they had me start outpatient therapy. So I had a therapist for the first time. But when you're a teenager, I don't know if this is still the case, but your parent has to accompany you to your therapy sessions. And so she would come, but she didn't really understand the concept of what therapy was. Like she thought I was being disciplined because I was disobedient or, whatever. And she's like, yeah, you're going to therapy because you're bad, like that kind of thing. And she would use my therapy sessions with my therapist to cry and get attention or seek attention from my therapist, like seek sympathy. And if any abuse was addressed by my therapist, she would just say, no, she's lying, kind of just gaslighting me. So that's another NPD trait, is just like her using my therapist to gain sympathy and attention.
Well, like being a child.
Yeah,
like,
being a child. And I was the child, but I never,
but you had to
I was never granted my childhood, and yeah.
Can you talk at all, or do you mind talking at all about like that hospitalization and what had happened when you were 15?
I had a few on and off when I was a teenager.
That you said that was the first.
It was
time.
all for like suicidal ideation. Like I would tell a friend that I was suicidal, or they would read a poem that I wrote that was really emo or something, and they would tell the guidance counselor, and they would be like, no, I think so that's how that happened, that particular hospitalization. And I ended up staying for 2 weeks at Elmhurst, which is the worst hospital. So I didn't
tell us, why is it the worst?
So, well, first of all, I can get into
your
like the psychiatric institutions of America and why they're so horrible, at least the public ones, which most of us only have access to. And so what they do is they put everyone together. They put people who have been cutting class for a month. They put kids who got into a fight. They put, so putting like suicidal and kind of like homicidal people in the same room,
right,
and giving them basically the same treatment. It's not really a treatment. To me, it seems like you all need to be on your best behavior. And if you do what we say, then you can get out of here.
So it's punitive.
It's punitive. It's absolutely punitive. It's not rehabilitating. The only thing that's rehabilitating is kind of you appreciate the outside world a little more,
It's conditional.
Yeah,
when you
yeah,
it's conditional love.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Where you're just coming from. So
exactly.
It's just exacerbating the situation.
So I remember the first time like leaving the hospital 2 weeks later, seeing sunlight and like feeling the breeze and just thinking, wow, this is amazing. Like, why did I ever think this was bad? And obviously that was a transient feeling, but
right.
If you're enjoying what you're hearing, please subscribe and give us a good rating so the powers that be can keep this podcast going. It would be great if we could talk more about your feelings of suicide, or, I don't want to put any words in your mouth, so you can just express whatever that is, what that is for you. We're made to believe that this is, oh my God, this is the most unusual thing. Nobody else has these thoughts and feelings. I think that it's also a part of the human experience, and people can go in and out of feelings or thoughts of suicide. I think it's probably not as unnatural.
I think most people have thought about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to say. I just don't want to and it would be great if you could elaborate on that.
Suicidal ideation is something that it's like a normal thought. It's like, what will I have for breakfast? Right. It's like, it's a very, I've had this thought for a decade. And when I post about it, I guess people don't realize the difference between passive suicidal ideation and actual intention. And I think people don't realize that people who are depressed have suicidal ideation almost daily. I think the worst feeling for me and my depression is like the numbness, just like the complete lack of anything, lack of motivation, lack of the disassociative experience that I have with my depression is probably hands down the worst thing. It's like not feeling like a person most days. Feeling very disconnected from my body, kind of being a passive observer, participant of my life and just watching things unfold and feeling like I have no control over anything. And it also like leads you to kind of become a performative person if you spend a lot of time depersonalizing, not feeling like you're in your body, but you still want to be like a good person, a fun person to be around. So I think I like developed this skill. I don't know if I would call it a skill, but when I was really early on, but just giggling a lot. I used to just like giggle compulsively. And I have these like, I've had these like laugh lines since I was a teen. And it's just, like I think I'm a very excitable person. I don't know if that comes across on my social media, but I'm like definitely I can be very outgoing. I can be very excitable. And sometimes it confuses me because I'm like, well, I feel dead inside. So where is this coming from? And that's also, it's all very confusing.
It makes me wonder, like, about your art. Like, how does that play into feeling dead inside?
It's kind of a disregard for the self, but I still see and value the beauty in life and people and interactions and relationships and art. And like, I think one of the things that really opened my eyes to the world growing up in a very dysfunctional, abusive, poverty ridden home is film. Like, I think film really opened my eyes and kind of saved my life, I think.
Right.
And when
Yeah.
did you start like making your own art and poetry and stuff?
Like in middle school, I was bullied a lot, and
For what purposes?
just for everything. Like, I didn't have any friends. Like, another trait of my narcissistic mom is she completely forbade me from like ever socializing, going out. Like, she had to have utter control over my life. So any conversation that I had without her, she had to be present. She had to observe. She had to pry. I wasn't allowed to have my own phone. Nothing. No kind of autonomy at all. So I just didn't have social skills for a lot of my life, and I also, we were also poor, so I didn't have like good clothes. If you live in a society that values you like based on how you look, I didn't have that, and so I just was bullied for everything, just how I looked, how I smelled, everything. And I had this English teacher named Miss Collymore. She was from Barbados, and she was like the most lovely, radiant, confident, long-necked human being ever. And really the only teacher that saw that I was being bullied so much every day, like relentlessly, and actually talked to me about it. And this one day after class, she just pulled me aside and she said, "Do you know that you're beautiful?" And I thought that was like a funny thing. No one ever told me that before. I hear that all the time now, but as like a 11-year-old, 12-year-old, no one ever told me that. And she would always like support my writing. Anytime I wrote an essay, she would leave like really kind of elaborate comments that no other teacher really bothered to make. And she just made me really, really interested in the English language. And I like began to take writing very seriously because she was like the only person, because my parents never validated me. Like, they never said good job or this is how to do this, or like, so this was the first like adult figure in my life ever who was like encouraging me and telling me that I'm good. And so maybe it's because she was the English teacher, but I was like, I want to start writing. Like, it was to kind of cope with all the suffering that I was experiencing. And then I started writing poetry then, and did it like almost every day. And then I would show them to her, not as an assignment. I would just show her my writings and my musings, and she would be happy to look at them. And
how did the writing change things for you emotionally?
This is kind of off topic, but it explains why writing was so important to me. So because we grew up poor, I never had my own room. Like, I never had my own room until I was 18. Like, we lived in a railroad apartment, like the 5 of us, just with 1 bedroom. And so I lived in like what would be considered the living room. And in order to get to the bathroom or to get to the kitchen or my parents' bedroom, you had to go through like my quote room.
There were 5 kids.
Yeah. Oh, well, no. Like, just like 5 of us total. So 3 kids, including me and my parents. So I never got to like create my space, essentially. And that's one of the reasons why I value aesthetics so much now and objects so much now, is because I never really had that. And so growing up, I would always like try to customize my room, and I would draw a lot. I would, especially because I wasn't allowed to go outside or have friends. Really, all I did was, like, I would make clothes for my like 99-cent store knockoff Barbie dolls out of construction paper. Like, I would just like glue little skirts and little blouses, and it would bring me so much joy. And I think that's really all I did, like 80% of the time. And so I would make all these drawings, but I would come home from school and they would be in the trash. Like, my mom, like, I don't even think it was like evil. Like, I think she just didn't understand. Yeah. Like, that's not something she.
It's superfluous or
yeah,
frivolous.
Yeah. Like, why would you have to study? Like, what is this? Yeah. And it's a very like also an Asian immigrant household kind of constant, or everywhere,
I think
really,
it's immigrant.
everywhere.
I think it's
yeah,
a fearful immigrant
Yeah.
everywhere across the board.
yeah,
People who have had hardship and
Yeah.
have come here
Yeah.
as the land of
yeah,
milk and honey,
Yeah.
or somehow the
Yeah.
idea of that or something.
yeah.
So how much did religion play into all of this?
Oh yeah, a lot. So much, actually. We haven't even talked about that. Yeah. So my parents, they were very conservative. I wasn't even allowed to kind of let my hair down. Like my hair always had to be in a ponytail. Religion had so much to do with my upbringing. I was very devoutly religious until I was about 14.
How did that
Okay.
manifest?
I would pray multiple times a day. It was that kind of mindset where I thought, like, if I kissed a boy, I would have to marry him. You know, that kind of thing. And I had a very spiritual relationship to Allah. I talked to him every day. Like he was the only being that I can speak to, that I can communicate to. It was such a comfort to have that religious spirituality until I grew out of it. But it was also really stifling because I had parents who were Muslims but practiced it in a very questionable, obviously like patriarchal, sexist way. You know, and that one of my like moments of awakening was like, it was on July 4th, we had this tradition where all of my extended family, we would have a picnic in Long Island. And so this one picnic, I was like 13, and I was just wearing kind of like a baggy t-shirt and like just normal jeans. Like they weren't form-fitting or anything. But my mom was like, you need to wear a veil on top of your t-shirt. And I was like, why would I do that? Like there's no skin at all. And she said, because your uncles are going to be there. And I remember just being like, well, like if my uncles are looking at my chest, at their like 13-year-old niece's chest, that's probably on them. Like I don't have to, you know, but there was something wrong there. And I don't know why it is like that moment in particular that really gripped me, because there were so many other instances of very similar things. Ever since then, I kind of just started rebelling more and more, which obviously really upset my parents. But
and how did that manifest? What were you doing to rebel?
I started dressing myself in the ways that I wanted to express myself, and like in the ways that I felt comfortable. And I would get beaten every day because of it. I would get yelled at, you know, slut shamed. Before I'd even like had my first kiss, I was slut shamed by my mom, you know, just because of what I was wearing. Like she would always surveil my body. Like my body was an object for her to constantly surveil. She was obsessed with it. Like she was obsessed with my body. And that's another whole thing. It's just her obsession with how I presented myself. And
your body is like this is this just by the nature of it just being the body, a female body, that you're
immediately sexualized.
Yeah.
As a child, you know, immediately sexualized as a child. And it's interesting, you know, considering, I mean, in her eyes, she was probably just shielding me from men, but it's just funny because the person that violated me the most was my father, who like sexually abused me. And that's where the hypocrisy comes in, is because my father was equally like,
don't wear this, don't wear that.
Yeah, don't wear this, don't wear that. And he abused me when I was a child. And that's the biggest irony, really. And so, yeah, I developed so much body dysmorphia. Like, it's endless. Like, I still really don't have a proper image of what I look like. I don't think anyone does, but I have a very distorted view of myself.
What do you think? See? Yeah.
Intellectually, I know that I'm attractive, but I don't. It's very rare for me to feel it. There's a dissonance between how I feel and how I know I look to others.
When your teacher told you that you were beautiful, pretty or beautiful?
Beautiful.
That's obviously something that's really stood out for you. Her saying that to you, like what? Why? What happened at that moment?
I was cynical even then. Like I don't even know. I didn't think that she necessarily meant it, but I appreciated that she said it, because no one had ever said something like that to me before, and it just made me feel like I was seen. I felt seen, really, is what happened there.
And so you were saying that you started rebelling and wearing what you wanted to wear, but then getting beaten up. What other ways did you like sort of rebel?
I would just not come home on time. I sort of started making friends, and I would go out with them. And another NPD mom thing. My mom, and I told you I didn't have a cell phone. So what my mom would do is she would trace all the calls that I would make from like the landline phone. So she would like redial and then find all the numbers of my friends, and she would save them. And this one day I remember during lunch in high school, I had to like call my mom to let her know that I would be going to the movies, and I was dialing her number on my friend's phone, and it showed up as like Crazy Lady. And I was like, why is my house phone number saved in your phone as Crazy Lady? And she was like, oh, like she called me one day, like really hysterical, like crying. And I was like, what? So it turns out my mom had been like calling the very few friends that I had and telling them to stay away from me, like crying hysterical, because in her eyes, they were taking me away from her. Like her possession of me was being threatened, and I was like learning who I was outside of her and her dominance over me.
So and then when you said that your first like hospitalization was 15, and that was like right when you were starting to rebel, it seems.
Yeah.
So can you talk about like do you feel like there's a link between that? Like what started happening?
Of course. I mean, I was rebelling, but I was also kind of like, I guess, reckless. And also my depression started manifesting like right around 15. I was always a very gifted, they call, I mean, I am totally against this term, but I was a gifted child. And then when I started high school, and I didn't know the terminology that I could use at the time, but found myself going to the nurse's office like every day just to like sleep, just to take naps on like the leather couch. But I did it every day. I would skip class and just sleep. I mean, now I know it was because I was really depressed, but I at the time it didn't, I just felt like I was being a bad student, and all of these expectations that I had as, a child of immigrants to succeed and excel in academia and to make my parents' sacrifice worthwhile. It was all really
so
crumbling
pressure,
so quickly. So yeah, I stopped. I went to like a very elite high school where everyone was extremely smart. And so I was kind of the odd sheep, because I would cut class and wear like we had a very strict dress code as well, where you would get demerits if you showed your shoulders or if your skirt was like more than 2 inches above your knee. And I would get demerits every day, like candy, like every day. And I couldn't go to prom. I couldn't do anything because of these demerits. And I didn't care. I did it every day. I really, really didn't care.
You were fighting to be yourself. You were fighting to know who you were.
Yeah. And I didn't know who I was yet, but I kind of wanted to really shove myself.
You had
in
to
that
fight
direction.
to find it. You had to fight.
Yeah.
If anyone ever tells me what to wear, honestly, like if I remember there was a couple of times on fashion shoots or whatever, and they're like, the celebrity or whatever, like everyone else on set's got to wear like red or black or something, and I would come in orange. I mean, there is like no way. I cannot be told what to wear, like ever. And it's just all about.
I totally feel that.
I will do the exact opposite. And when I was in school, I used to also same thing. Like it was kind of like private school and high school, and you could wear on Friday, you could wear jeans or something, and I would like wear them.
Yeah.
And every other day, or like. And
yesterday I made fun of you because I'm like, you're 60 years old and you're still so identified with your inner 16-year-old rebel that she went to lunch with her dad. At the
Ivy
Princeton Club.
I love that.
The Princeton Club in Midtown, which is all suits, and she wore this raggy bandana she's wearing now, and
God.
like a
torn
the
up
most
striped
un-Princeton
t-shirt.
Club outfit. I was like, Mom, you're gonna give your father a fucking heart attack. Can you just like maybe just not do that? And
but
she
the
was
thing
like,
is
no.
that I'm not even doing it purposely. It's just I couldn't. do it any other way. This is what I felt like yesterday. That's it. This is how I feel.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would cry in a corner.
That's
all day.
so that was my whole experience. That was my whole experience. Like, I didn't know, but this is how I felt, and this is what I was going to do.
I'm either going to be myself or I'm going to cry in the corner all day.
Exactly. And like clinging to myself or what I thought like myself was so important because for the longest time I was deprived of that.
I really just want to kind of get into like the beginning of like struggling with the mental health and like being hospitalized, being a few times in your teens. And like, I'm so impressed and so inspired by how like honest you are about it now and how self-aware you are now and brave to talk about these things. And like, just more of your journey with that and like more of your journey with owning the mental health struggles that you have and also with learning about what they are and even knowing how to identify them the way that you now are so like literate and articulate about. I don't know. It's a big question, but I guess I'm just that's kind of where I'm trying to go. I don't know.
There just needs to be a revolution in the way that we talk about mental health. There just needs to be. It's been across the entire world. No one. There's not a place where people openly talk about it, and I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. People deal with this daily. People lose lives.
And was there like a straw that broke a camel's back? Were you ashamed for a while?
Yeah, I'm still ashamed.
Right.
I mean, I'm still on the daily ashamed.
Right.
I mean, I won't even tell you my other diagnosis.
Right.
Like I'm not just depressed. I have a whole other thing. And, I'm still like grappling with like, do I tell, like usually I'll feel it. Like my closest friends know all of my diagnoses, but, I'm like, do I say it publicly? I still don't know because I already feel so vulnerable online just because I have to deal with so many people and their baggage and their opinions or their, just their lack of awareness. Like I got so many messages when I was talking about my struggle, especially recently. They were very, mean-spirited, and I think what I came to realize is like these conversations are bound to make people uncomfortable because it's the first time we're having them, and that's actually a good sign. It's supposed to the outsider. I'm like a person who's popular on social media, and I'm attractive and I dress well and I have friends, and like what could possibly be wrong? What could I have possibly been through? And to this day, I mean, like every day I get messages from people who accuse me of faking my mental illness and my GoFundMe because they see me having a good time. And people don't realize that those two things can exist concurrently. Like I can have a good time and still be a mentally ill person. And
It's very complex and nuanced.
Yeah.
So when you say you said a couple of times like you've said what happened to you recently. Can you tell us more about what you mean by that?
I attempted suicide for the first time in my life. Time is kind of a strange thing because my concept of time has kind of been warped for the last month. But I think it was 3 weeks ago now. And my friend Veronica somehow had keys to her spare bathroom where I was and managed to come in on time and call the EMS. And so I survived.
What was like going on in your life at that moment?
I just moved back from Berlin. The other thing about how we handle mental illness and depression is like even the treatments that are available are so subpar and archaic in my mind. Like it's when they give you a new medication, they never know if it's going to work. You have to try it for a few months and see, wade through the horrible side effects and see if it's worth it ultimately. And so I've tried so many different kinds of antidepressants, and I was on this one antidepressant that was actually finally starting to sort of work, and I was starting to feel like a person again, but I had a really bad seizure. So I had to discontinue that one. And
when was that seizure?
This was right before I moved to Berlin. I was having a stoop sale, and I was like getting rid of all of my possessions to like kind of
cleanse
and supplement like money for the move itself. And I like had the seizure while going up and down the stairs, and thankfully like there were people there who were able to care for me. And
from the medication.
Yeah, it was a combination of the medication and like I think some drinks that I had and like dehydration. I think it was but basically it was
confluence of-
it was basically primarily the medication. And then for a few months I went without it. Realized that was a really bad idea. I can't just not be on meds. I know a lot of people feel weird about medication, but listen, you can't, like, some people need it. It's not a big deal. I'm sure meditation works for some people. Other things work,
Right.
but some people actually need medication. And
For sure, it shouldn't be a shameful thing.
It's like you wouldn't tell a diabetic not to take
Right.
insulin. I mean, it's
Absolutely.
just. So I started this newer antidepressant just a few months ago, and I experienced mania for the first time. Which, if you've never experienced mania and you're experiencing it the first time, it's a very utterly bewildering feeling. I mean, I didn't even know.
Can you try to describe it?
Yeah, I can't even describe. I mean, I didn't even know at the time that there was something wrong or erratic about my behavior. I thought I was being normal, which is the craziest thing. So on a whim, I broke up with my ex. I broke up with my partner. I ended all of my friendships in Berlin and moved back to New York. And
During the manic
episode. And then that subsided. And so now I'm back to not being on meds. And I'm trying to figure out what's next for me. And do I want to experiment with another antidepressant? And what if that...
Have they ever worked?
Well, they were. I mean,
The one that gave you the seizure.
But other than that, no.
How did you feel on that one? The one that gave you the seizure?
There was the cloud was kind of
Lifted.
dissipating. It was slowly dissipating, and I felt more present. I could be sitting with a person any time of the day and really feel like I was there. Like, I'm on this chair, I'm with you. I can feel that. It was a very just clarity, and
So was looking back, other than the manic episode, would you not have moved back? I mean,
I don't
Berlin
know. Who knows?
or,
I mean, Berlin was definitely never a permanent
right.
home. I mean, New York's my home. I'm gonna come back here no matter what.
Right.
But yeah, it was definitely a premature move.
It was abrupt.
Yeah, it was abrupt for sure. I mean, I moved without any of my things. Like, now I'm, I didn't even consider that I'd be homeless. Like, that's not even something I thought about. I was just, I'm gonna break up with you, and I don't want to be friends with you anymore. And I felt like I could just go around doing that. I felt, and.
So what exactly led to the suicide attempt? It was getting off the meds and being here and
and just being really depressed and I thought I had nothing. I thought I was like, well, I had this home, I had this partner who loved me unconditionally, and it wasn't perfect. It was not a perfect relationship by any means. He had his faults. But I felt like, what will work for me? This is all hopeless. This is all futile. It was this feeling of utter futility. And also I had just given up, I think. I even had this thought that I love myself too much to force myself through a lifetime of suffering. Like, I thought I had had enough. And it was a very calm, not a methodic approach. I just had the thought, I was completely sober, just took all the pills I had. I remember losing consciousness and
in the bathroom.
Yeah, in the bathroom, and I'm not religious, but I did find myself having a conversation with God to forgive me when that was happening. That was the last thing I remember.
I think that's so incredibly fascinating that you felt that you loved yourself too much.
Because people usually think it's because I think I'm worthless, or I don't. I know that I have a lot to offer. I know everything nice that you can say about me. I know that. But at the end of the day, I'm still suffering, and there's I don't know what to do. Is what it is. Yeah.
And so then what? You just woke up and you were in a hospital.
Yeah, and then I was in the hospital, and that was a whole other thing. And
because then they put you back in the mental
in the psych ward,
yeah.
and
Elmhurst again?
No, this was Woodhull, which is also equally horrible. Like, I think it's worse, actually. I was reading Yelp reviews after I came out for the hospital, and a patient overheard one of the nurses calling them inmates. I witnessed just abhorrent behavior, just people, like really mentally ill people, schizophrenics, being manhandled. But also the facilities themselves were horrible. Like, we didn't have socks, and it was extremely dirty. There were like blood stains on the wall, and there was it was people were sleeping on chairs in the hallway in the waiting room for like 2 days before even getting a bed. And like I said, it's punitive.
Right.
It's all about like, when
It's
can
more
you
of the
get out?
same.
Yeah. It's like, we'll hold you here temporarily until we think that
You're
won't-
like a bad
no.
person.
Yeah.
And like you're,
Yeah.
How did you feel like in reflecting in that, or how do you feel, or how did you feel like reflecting
I
on
woke
that
up and I
moment?
was instantly like, well, wow, that didn't work. And, a little disappointed, but immediately like, okay, I have to get out of here, because I knew that place wasn't going to help me.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I had the upper hand of like, I'm a smart person. I can enunciate. So I was able to talk to doctors and convince them that I can leave. And I don't, and maybe I shouldn't have. Like, I don't think I was, like, really, I don't think I was, I don't think they should have discharged me. But also, that's not the place where one
Heals.
Definitely not.
Mm-hmm.
how do you feel now?
Every hour is different, but right now, like, when I'm with you guys, we're having these conversations, I feel really good. I feel really good right now.
Mm-hmm.
I feel calm. I've had like a really lovely past week. I've realized who my real friends are
Through this.
seeing who's there, and I'm surrounded by really, really lovely people. I'm so grateful for my friends. Like, my friends are my family. I'm so I'm sorry.
Go.
I'm so,
Everyone cries in these.
I'm so grateful.
I mean, everyone cries in StyleLikeU interviews. It's part of it.
I'm just very grateful for the people in my life.
What do you feel are like some of the things that the people in your life have done that have felt like most supportive to you?
Everything from providing shelter when I moved back and I didn't have a place to live, feeding me, making sure I left the house if I was like totally, depleted of energy, and just being like sharing space with me, like not even talking, just knowing that I needed someone to be there, and just
Unconditional.
Unconditional, just,
That is what you need.
Yeah.
That is what you need. It is what you need when you've had so much conditional love and so damaging, and all you need is, in my opinion, is unconditional love and someone to give that to you.
And it took me such a long time to even be receptive to that kind of love, because if you've never had it, it's very foreign, it's very scary, and you don't think you deserve it. And I'm slowly it's still happening. I'm still trying to tell myself that I deserve it. And
Receiving is a huge, hard thing. Yeah. I think that's probably very common for a lot of people to let yourself receive.
Yeah.
Was this the first time in the last month that you've been so public about?
I've always been vocal about my depression, and I guess on a smaller scale, but I've never been I'd never posted videos of myself disassociating or crying or completely dehydrated without water for 2 days, lying in bed, unable to move, like just catatonic state. And, that really shocked people. And people are really abrasive. And I guess when they kind of see you as a commodity when you have a following, and they don't ask you questions in the way that they should. And people they'll be very
They think
curt.
you're not lonely because of the
Yeah.
thousands of followers. Or
And they'll be like, why are you posting this? Like, you should get off your social media. You should, people were like, don't you have friends who are there for you? And I'm like, yes, I do. Like, you have no idea. Like, why are you making these assumptions about this person that you don't know? But also, like, I'm doing this deliberately, not only to cope. There are worse coping mechanisms, but also to show other people that they're not fucking alone.
Totally.
They need to see themselves mirrored. They need to see themselves reflected. And I'm tired
Had you seen it?
No.
When you were younger?
No, I had never seen that.
Right.
And it would have, God knows, it would have helped so much as a teen, as a young
the
adult.
validation.
Yeah.
Is it like you were saying, like that empty, I mean, that empty hole of validation that you didn't, because you never got it.
Yeah.
But to have the validation from someone else that you're not crazy, that that your feelings are valid and you're not alone.
And I've gotten hundreds of messages from people with those thoughts. Like, and I guess the thing with like depersonalizing and disassociating is like I don't even recognize my importance to other people sometimes. Like sometimes I don't think I'm capable of affecting anyone in any way. Like I don't think I can hurt them or inspire them or anything else. And this was a very eye-opening experience for me, is because I really realized that I have an impact on others, and I want to use this platform that I have to really elevate that.
Well, because it's very, 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 very brave.
Thank you.
Very brave.
And so how did you come up with the idea to crowdfund your therapy? Which
I didn't do it. Someone did it for me.
Oh.
A total stranger just made one for me.
That's amazing. A total stranger saw a post of yours.
Yeah, and they were. Yeah.
What did you write about? How you couldn't afford therapy right now?
Yeah, because of specific therapy that I need.
Right.
It's not commonly practiced, and also I have Medicaid, so it's not.
Right.
It's just not a good doctor isn't
Right.
going to.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so amazing.
Yeah. Really. I had a total
Did
stranger.
Did you start going
donate.
yet, or you're still?
No, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait list, and so we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
It's so important for the world to understand that being happy all the time in this kind of like fake kind of, buying into the media culture and fashion culture, whatever it is that everyone's buying into. I buy this bag, I buy this lipstick, I get to this party, I'm happy culture that we live in. I really truly believe underneath it all that all of these people are or possibly even more troubled and or as unhappy and and in other words, that like what is unhappiness and like what is happiness. And because I'm sitting here with you and you wanted to not live anymore as of 3 weeks ago, at a point 3 weeks ago, but to me, I'm sitting here with an extremely deep and warm and beautiful human who does have so much to offer and to give and is so full of life. And I don't know, it just makes me think like, what the fuck is happiness and what is unhappiness? I don't know. It's just like, it's all up for grabs.
Yeah.
And this sort of obsession with being happy, is making people very unhappy.
Yeah. Exactly. That's very important.
What do you think is one of the a big risk you've taken in your life, or the biggest risk you've taken?
Leaving home, like leaving my family, because that's unheard of where I'm from. Like the culture that I come from, like the girl never leaves the house until she's married, and I was the first person who did that.
How old were you? I
was 19, and I did it because I absolutely had to, and we don't have time to really get into that. But I was thrust into this world without like any resources. Like I didn't know how to do anything. And I basically taught myself everything there is to learn. And I taught myself with the help of like the friends that I've acquired throughout the years, but they've really guided me. And I learned how to become like a whole fucking person, like this grown woman that I am today. I feel like I did it all on my own because there was no one that raised me. And I should be proud of myself for that. And I'm saying it now. I'm proud of myself. Yeah.
What does self-acceptance mean to you?
Self-acceptance to me is recognizing your duality as a human being and accepting the grimy bits as well as the good bits and realizing they both make up who you are, and just to be more forgiving when you do fuck up and when we're all figuring this out together. And especially now, it's such an exciting time where we're having all of these dialogues, not just about mental illness, but I mean, everything, the Me Too movement, everything, it's all so new, and there's not like a protocol that's been established, you know, so we're all having these dialogues right now. It's all new. We're all figuring it out, and just have compassion for yourself and for others because everyone's trying, you know. This was lovely. Thank you so much.
And thank you for
wonderful.
trusting us and being so open. And
yes, thank
brave.
you for trusting us and being the person and being so incredibly brave, really, because actually we wouldn't be changing the world if it wasn't for people like you.
Thank you so much.
So that's what it takes.
Thank you. That's been a pleasure.
We hope you were inspired by this episode.
Until next week, that's it from me, Elisa.
And me, Lily.
If you agree that facades separate us and being radically honest brings us together, help spread the movement for radical self-acceptance by sharing this episode and subscribing to our podcast.
You can also watch our videos by subscribing to our YouTube channel and following us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook using the handle @StyleLikeU.
That's the letter U instead of the word you.
And check out our book, True Style is What's Underneath, The Self-Acceptance Revolution, on Amazon or at a local bookstore near you.
We can't skip ahead to a happy ending or live inside a photoshopped image or an Instagram filter. There's no finding oneself when glossing over the truth. A note to all listeners that if you are experiencing suicidal thoughts, please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline 1-800-273-8255.